thanks to Barry and everyone at AONTAS for inviting us to speak today. As Barry said already, my name is Jennifer Murray and I'm the Ability Programme Manager based in Castlebar, County Mayo. And earlier this year, we did win an AONTAS Star Award for a learning initiative that supports social inclusion. We were just absolutely blown away and completely over the moon with the award, to be honest, and with the recognition that it brought to the programme, as well as all the huge amount of publicity provided by AONTAS. So again, a massive thank you to AONTAS for all of that. In today's webinar, you're going to hear a little bit about our programme, how we adapted to working during COVID-19. And then Martin from the training department in IWA is going to be talking a little bit about the training that can be provided and accessible learning environments. And then also we have Sarah Harrington, who's one of our ability participants, and you're going to get to hear about her own experience as a person with a disability participating in education. So for anyone who hasn't heard of us, we are a national job coaching and employability skills project, which kicked off in October 2018. We're currently funded until the end of August this year, and we've applied for further funding through the Dormant Accounts Funds. We are optimistic that we'll be successful, but we won't actually hear until next month. So everyone on the call today, please keep your fingers and toes crossed for us. What we do then, we support young people aged 18 to 29 with any kind of physical disability to get closer to work. And it's not solely for wheelchair users. Obviously, with the term Irish Wheelchair Association, that link is there in people's minds. But if your disability affects you physically in any way, then we can support you. We spend a lot of time networking and forming relationships with employers and other relevant organisations. And that's so that we can best support and signpost our participants, as best that we can. It's really important to do all that networking so that you know what's going on, what's available, and what's out there for all of your participants in their locality. And the key point in my eyes about our programme is that progression is very, very different for every participant. And it's not just about getting a job. It's all about moving that one step closer to employment and what that looks like for that individual. My three fab job coaches are here on the call today. Each job coach covers a huge area. So we located the coaches in that way to ensure that any participants in the Republic could be met face-to-face for their coaching sessions. And that was our unique selling point before COVID took over the world. As you can see from the map, Sarah in the west covers Donegal to Clare, Joanne in the south covers Wicklow to Kerry, and Anne in the east covers Monaghan to Laois. We currently have 101 participants on the programme, and they're spread out all over the Republic. Wanted to give you some brief information about our participants, and I promise this is the only slide that I have with data or graphs, I promise. So gender split, nearly split down the middle, okay? We have one more female than male. Geographical spread, so that's where all of our participants are. And then this is employment related progression. So overall, we have 17 people in paid employment, and 3 people on a CE scheme and 4 people volunteering. So some of the roles that are those paid positions, their titles are things like lecturer, PR, events, advertising, HR, marketing, social media, and disability specialised personal trainer. So these are really meaningful and significant positions, and they're not just a tick box exercise to get someone into a job so that we can say that they're working. Every participant works on objectives with their job coach, and those objectives are determined by the learner themselves. There are currently 473 objectives on the CRM system. They're quite varied, as you can imagine, but they can be widely categorized into the 7 that you can see here on the table. Employment obviously is the most common theme, but like I said before, ability is not just all about working. Objectives like social integration, mental health, physical health, they may not spring to mind when you think about a typical supported employment programme, but when you're entering the workforce, we feel that it's so important that you feel prepared. And if you work on these factors, we think our participants will be more resilient and more ready for employment when the opportunity arises. The table shows the variety of goals that people are working towards, but it also demonstrates, I think, the different levels of work readiness that all of our participants are at. So the ability team had been up and running for about 1.5 years. Things were working away nicely. We were getting our groove on. Recruitment of participants was steadily increasing. All those relationships were developing. Word was getting out about the program. And then boom, March 2020 happened. And everything was different, extremely different. We had been a service that came to the learner. And this was a huge deal for us because so many people with physical disabilities experience issues accessing transport. So no matter where you were in the country, we would get to you, we would meet you at a place that suited you, and we provided you with that one-to-one coaching session face-to-face. Now all of a sudden we couldn't do that anymore, and things had to change, and they had to change very quickly. The girls will kill me for putting that up. For the ability team, we, I suppose, like everybody else, had to start working from home. When I look back on it now, I can see that we were very lucky in some respects because we had always been a remote team since the beginning of the program. We were all in different parts of the country and we were well used to communicating as a team through email or phone or WhatsApp. We did used to have a monthly in-person, face-to-face, real-life meeting in Athlone once a month, and obviously that had to be knocked on the head. So instead, we scheduled weekly team meetings using Microsoft Teams. And I also have one-to-one sessions with the job coaches once a month. And then, of course, recruitment of new participants, that had to go online as well. We couldn't head out to a group of people and talk to them. So everything had to be done online. So we attended an awful lot of networking, remote networking events and webinars to try and get some new participants onto the program. And just a note that it was really quite funny at the start when we were having our video calls and all of those networking events. And, you know, this wasn't something that anyone was overly comfortable with, let's just say. So for the first while, you know, that point when everyone thought, oh, you know, this will be 2 months max and then we'll all be back at the office. For that first while, we always kept our cameras off, always. But I suppose we did gradually get used to it. How little did we know, I suppose, at that stage that it's just the norm now, and you do really get used to it. I won't say that I'm perfectly comfortable with seeing myself on screen, but I am a lot more used to it at this stage. So what did this change mean for our participants then? Well, obviously, there were no more in-person meetings. That was a major change to how we ran the program. All of the coaching sessions had to be conducted through video conferencing, and participants were asked which platforms they would prefer to use. Some people find Zoom easier, others prefer Microsoft Teams, but we left it up to the individual to decide what worked best for them. All of our learners were asked which way they prefer to be contacted and how often. Some of our people wouldn't feel comfortable using the phone, for example, so they might use email communication instead. And just another point there could actually now be less time between participants' coaching sessions if they wanted, because we were spending 0 time traveling around the country, and therefore obviously had more time to schedule appointments. If you remember the map that I showed you, I mean, we were constantly on the road. We became best friends with our cars completely. So now that all that traveling was gone, it did open up our schedules so that we could fit more coaching sessions in if the participant wanted it. But our services remained available throughout COVID for all of our clients, which is the main thing for us. We were always there for our participants. Some other points then that I just wanted to note that COVID highlighted: IT skills. So at the start of lockdown, some of our participants declined to take part in virtual coaching because they felt their IT skills weren't up to scratch. However, once it became clear that we weren't going to go back to the old way of working anytime soon, then most of them actually came round to the idea. And this actually pushed them outside of their comfort zone and encouraged them to upskill in IT, which was great for them. Laptop or PC availability. So some of our learners live at home. So that meant that they could have had one or even both parents working at home as well as a number of siblings who may have been doing homeschooling at the same time. So that meant that unfortunately their coaching sessions could not be prioritized because the home PCs were being used. the major bugbear of mine, internet connectivity. If I just had a magic wand, it would just make such a difference to everyone. It was and still is a major barrier for some of our participants. The internet is so bad in certain areas that people have asked not to have any coaching sessions until they can return face-to-face meetings, because it's just so frustrating to try and have a coaching session when the internet keeps dropping and it's very laggy. We've also had participants who were offered fully remote work placements, but they've actually had to decline because they couldn't get appropriate internet coverage. That was nothing to do with the internet provider. Changing providers wouldn't have actually helped. It was all to do with the way the house was set up and the wiring and the remote location of the house. And that was just very frustrating and disappointing for everyone who was involved. Any participant who can't take part in coaching sessions, they can still have and do have regular check-in conversations with their coach, but they're not full-on coaching sessions. And as such, a small number of people have missed out on a year's worth of coaching and the opportunities that that could have brought. So I know that COVID-19 and the word benefits don't really seem to go hand in hand together. However, it's definitely brought working from home to the forefront for employers, and they now know that it can be done, and not just that, done even better than in an office block. And that's improved access to employment for some people with disabilities, as they don't have to worry about accessible workspaces or personal assistants coming to the office or finding accessible transport. And if you think about it too, it's also leveled the playing field for some people when it comes to interviews, because when you're on a Zoom call and you're having that remote interview, all that you can see really is the head and shoulders of the other person. And you wouldn't really be able to make out if that person is a wheelchair user or not. And this has made some of our participants feel a bit more at ease about the whole process of interviewing for a job. A major recurring issue that people with physical disabilities can face is that of social isolation. As I mentioned earlier, our participants come from all over the country. And if you think about it, accessible transport is difficult to come by in populated areas at the best of times, and it's nearly non-existent in rural and remote areas. And whilst COVID has brought us all together virtually, it really has only exacerbated this isolation issue for most. And it was clear after the first few weeks of lockdown that there was a real need for our participants to see other people, and we felt like we had to do something to respond to this. So we began what we called our Ability webinar series. And this was the first time that all of our participants could come together and see each other in the one place. The webinars cover a variety of topics, and they happen at least once a month, sometimes more. And whilst they cover informative topics, they're also a very informal session, and they can provide a space for our learners to speak to each other, to interact, give advice, and that peer-to-peer support, which is so important. This was and still very much is a big need for our participants. The topics that are covered in the webinars are varied, like I said. However, definitely our most popular webinar by far was actually hosted brilliantly by one of our own ability participants called Sorka. Sorka is a recent food science and nutrition graduate who stepped into the world of self-employment, and she started her own business. Sorka shared lots of healthy lifestyle tips, and she spoke about her employment journey so far. It was so well received by everyone who was there, and also excuse me, and also when other ability people can see one of their own doing what they love to do as a job, it really demonstrates and proves to them that anything is possible. And I'm going to finish up very soon by showing a very short video, and that'll be just before we hand over to Martin then. But I wanted to leave you first with just one thought. People with disabilities, they're just people, that's it, okay? Don't be afraid of the word disability, and just remember to speak to the person involved as you speak to anyone else. Treat them like an individual and you won't go far wrong. And nobody knows more about their disability than that person. So talk to them so that you can figure out how you can best support them in their learning or their employment environment. Oh, again, I'll be killed for showing this as well. The two people you see here are two ability participants named Carmel and Ikra, who are now both members of the board of Irish Wheelchair Association. Like, how amazing is that? Our participants continue to show us time and time again that anything is possible. So everyone, if you don't currently cater for people with disabilities, either in your workplace or in your learning environments, then you're missing out. Put it simply, there is no such thing as too much diversity in any organization. Thanks for listening. Here's some contact info that will be shared afterwards. And I'm going to hand over to Emma now, who's going to play a short video, and then Martin will take over. Thanks. We are the Ability Programme with Irish Wheelchair Association, and we started in October of 2018. Our programme provides job-seeking and employability skills coaching to young people aged 18 to 29 with any sort of physical disability. It's not just for wheelchair users.
So we meet people where they're at. So that can be some person who has the desire just to learn how to use Zoom. Another person could be really ready to engage in employment or work experience. It looks very different for every individual with whom we work. And so we help them to set their own goals, their own objectives, and to bit by bit break down those goals so they can achieve them.
I had a career in the army, and unfortunately I was playing a rugby match. I damaged my spine, so I ended up with a long-term disability, so I couldn't return to my career. I found a course in fitness and I qualified as a personal gym instructor for people with disabilities, so I'm working full-time now from it.
I signed up for the Ability Programme because I knew what I wanted to do, but I didn't know how to get into it. It's benefited me in a lot of different ways. The biggest one I could say is confidence and realising that I could actually do what I wanted to do.
So my name is Martin Kelly. I work for the Irish Wheelchair Association Training Department, and I'm going to just share a few slides with you and give you a bit of information of how the training department coped and how we met the challenges of the last 12 months and right up to now. So I'll just share my slides with you now. Cool, great stuff. Thank you very much. So yeah, over the past 12 months, very similar to what Jennifer was saying, we're just going along our normal route of training, and of course our training needs to be always accessible to meet everybody's needs. But when COVID hit, we really were dealt a bit of a challenge of how we could reach people, how we could put the same information across, the same quality of training across as we had been done previously face-to-face in classroom environments. And we had already started to introduce quite slowly e-learning into our normal, suite of training anyway. But from the point of when COVID hit to up to now, and maybe just now, we've introduced 20 e-learning programs and projects across that 12-month span. They're quite time consuming, as anybody that's ever built or been involved in e-learning programs or virtual classrooms and changing your whole way of training has ever been. If you've ever been involved in that, you know the task that's involved in that. So it really put us to the pit of our collars, and over the space of 12 months, pretty much over 20 e-learning programs had to be designed, redesigned, created, built, and delivered. But the great thing about it is, and one of the main positives, I suppose, for IWA anyway, in relation to COVID, was that it put us in the position where it forced us to create this and forced us to use our imaginations and to be flexible. So we run a normal learning management system like Moodle. I'm sure some of you might be familiar with Moodle and the different kind of management systems. So our one really basically started off very, very simple. So over the last, like I said, over the last 12 months, we've upgraded it. You can see from this slide here that we've introduced everything from like desktop display, safety, introduction to Children's First and how you log onto the website, everything like that for our staff and our service users. And so really, like I said, it forced us into a situation, but actually it's turned out to be quite a benefit for us. On 2 of our programs in particular, over the past 12 months, there has been an 80% increase in attendance. And I really do think that that's probably down to the fact that people feel more confident, to be honest, online. And Jennifer was saying there that, you know, people, it does take people a while, but I think it's such a part of our lives now. It's so ingrained that people have just embraced it and engage in it fully now. So our experience with the e-learning from our staff and service users has been really, really positive. The self-advocacy team in IWA also have launched their own online advocacy training. And basically, that's a huge thing for IWA. It's a new thing for IWA, but it's also a massive thing for that particular team, because what they can do now is they can reach out and to people that want to get involved in lobbying, want to know their rights and advocate for themselves. That's an incredible thing, really. And again, I think the take up on that is going to be really even more so now that it's online and flexible and available to people that could be all over the country. So that's something that's going to run really well. As well as that, you've got the nuts and bolts of it, really. So the reduction in training expenses for IWA has been quite significant. We've got approximately 1,600 assisted living staff all over the country, which is a huge amount. And the training for them obviously has been reduced, which means that, you know, the expenses on the organisation as a whole, and we're a voluntary organisation, have come down significantly, and that's a massive bonus and a win for us as well over the past 12 to 18 months. I keep saying 12 months, it's probably more. Is it 15, 16 months, I think, yeah. But naturally is reduce our trainers as well, because our trainers would be traveling around the country. And again, Jennifer touched on that with the ability coaches. It reduced that hugely. So, you know, they can, the same quality of training, same information got across from the comforts of their own living rooms and the learners as well. So the flexibility that's given us has been huge. And we operate on Microsoft Teams. And what's made it really interesting is to see the development of Microsoft Teams. I know this is probably boring for people, but it's made a real difference. The teams have really got their game together now in Microsoft, because Zoom were the things that people were using at the start, and even our trainers, and you know, we were all saying, oh, can we get Zoom? Can we get Zoom? But Teams has really stepped up, and it's made it way more accessible. It's made it easier. Breakout rooms. You know, there was none of that at the start. So again, it seems to be that the COVID situation has forced even huge, massive corporations like Microsoft to adapt, which obviously is a great benefit to us. One of the other things that it's really helped us with is our disability awareness training. We provide that for everybody, and it's something that we really drive now more than ever, because no more than you know, initiatives like, you know, the Public Initiative for the ability programs and so on. Our disability awareness program is something that we think is crucial for every employer to have. In fact, not just every employer, but schools, colleges. People really aren't aware of disability in the challenges that people with disabilities have. They may think they do, but this awareness program really does kind of make people kind of embrace the idea of, first of all, employing somebody with a disability, and second of all, getting rid of those blurred lines between ability and disability. And it gives them, you know, information and probably and hopefully confidence to engage more with people with disabilities, to realize and recognize that we all have different abilities. Takes the focus off the negative side of that, and that's what we really want out of that. People we've been engaged with so far and are still working with. We've got Airbnb. We've worked with UCD and DCU, the Irish Film Institute, Fisheries Board, Chadwick's, and all these major organisations and corporations and colleges. You know, they've really gotten on board with this, and we really feel that it's just the start. To be honest, we really feel it's just the start of something absolutely huge. And And the more that we get out there, I think the more benefit that it is going to be, not just to the IWA, but more benefit is going to be for employers as well. When, you know, as they realize that, again, everybody has just different abilities, and disability really has nothing to do with it. The idea of the whole thing really for us, and because it's more flexible and online now, we can do blended versions, and this is how we've kind of I suppose made it more accessible for our people that want to come to the courses. We want to make sure that the people that we have, our members, people with disabilities that work in IWA and not work in IWA, want to get involved in the awareness training and tell their stories. And really, we want to basically make it as accessible as we can. So the blended version lets us do that. We have an online version as well, which will be ready in September. And that's really the kind of the taster, and that's the key when people kind of do the online piece, the e-learning piece that's self-directed. I think it probably will push them to want a more blended version and want a face-to-face experience, and to really kind of come to those sessions to learn about the different types of disabilities, the different legislation that's involved, and to take the edge, the do's and don'ts of, you know, when people are even speaking about disability. So hopefully that will be really, really interesting. I do believe it is. I mean, the training team, again, we believe that it's going to be big, and we believe that it's going to happen. And really that's it. I mean, in regard to I hope I didn't go too quick. I feel like I've talked about a million miles an hour there, which is usually the way when I'm looking at myself in the camera. But hopefully that gives you an idea of how we've made a change and shifted our focus and shifted our training over the past 16 months. So yeah, that's it. And thank you very much. And I will hand you over to Sarah now. So thanks.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sarah Harrington. I'm from Cork, and I've been part of the Ability Programme since it started in 2018. I'm here to talk about my experience of education. So I'm going to do this from 3 different perspectives. I'm currently doing a course on patient advocacy, an online course on patient advocacy. I have previously done a degree in social science and a master's in social policy, and I'm also a part-time lecturer in the adult continuing education program in UCC. So that's just a quick background to explain where I'm coming from. Now, the #1 tip that I would like people to take away from this is to not be afraid to ask for help. I'll give you a very good example very recently. In the advocacy course I'm doing at the moment, the platform that they were using wasn't accessible with the screen reader I use. So I got in touch with one of the tutors straight away and said, look, this platform isn't working with my screen reader. Can you please send me all the information in PDF? And to be fair, they were absolutely brilliant about it. They accommodated me straight away. And every time they send me a piece of work, they're like, does that work? Is there anything we can do differently? So there's this perception that asking for help draws attention to the fact that you're different, and draws attention to the fact that you have quote unquote special needs, but it doesn't. It just allows people to understand you better and allows you to achieve to your full potential and enjoy the experience rather than struggling through with a system that doesn't work for you. So as a lecturer, I tend to plan my lessons around using different mediums. So I would use PowerPoint, I would use videos, and I would use a lot of TED Talks to kind of use real life examples to reinforce the theory. And that's how I like to be inclusive. I would also have all my slides in black and white, white writing, black background, as it increases the color contrast, and it's easier for people with visual impairments to actually see and be able to participate. The number one thing is to, if you are a student with a disability and you encounter problems, talk to your lecturers early so that they can modify the program to suit your needs. And like sometimes it doesn't take rocket science. Like sometimes it can be as simple as sending any articles that you want to read during a session to the participant who uses a screen reader in advance, so that they have an opportunity to read the material using the screen reader in advance and participate in the discussion then afterwards. Never be ashamed of your disability, because the help is there. I mean, I'd never let it hold me back. And I've had really, really enjoyable experiences throughout my education. And who knows, maybe sometime in the distant future, I'll go back and do a PhD. But has anybody got any questions?
That's brilliant, Sarah. I really appreciate that. You're putting me to shame now saying you're going to do a PhD, though, in fairness. So
well, maybe. Who knows?
It's brilliant, and I suppose, look, I'm just going to say now, if anyone has any questions as well, do pop the hand up, or just again, you can just shout as well. But I actually thought that was just a great point there about doing the white writing on the black background. I know now it's so simple, but it's so it can make such a difference.
Like I say, it's people think, oh my God, reasonable accommodations, expensive. They think it's gonna cost the earth and take loads and loads of time, but it's not. It's simple things like sending material out in advance, or having material on a black background with white writing, or even supplementing the theoretical material with TED Talks and stuff like that, so that people have different mediums to work from.
The importance of reasonable accommodation, which Sarah had brought up in her talk, and how things that might feel a bit overpowering or unachievable for employers or trainers can turn out to be a lot less challenging than we would have thought. And so the important thing is obviously that the person with the physical disability of, or whatever type of accommodation needs to be made, are the best people to tell us what they need, and that we should always listen and not be afraid to ask. Sarah's point that she should never be afraid to ask either for what she needs is very important. The other thing I think was the CE eligibility, Community Employment Scheme eligibility, because maybe some people mightn't be aware that there is a possibility of having people with a disability on a CE scheme, and to check out with your local area for that, because that is another route for people on their path to full paid employment in the future. And it's a great way to get experience of working in teams and timekeeping and all these other things that perhaps you haven't experienced if you haven't been in employment before. And then another thing that struck me was, I can't remember who said it, so please tell me, was it, no, I don't know who it was, I'm sorry. Somebody was talking about a resource centre and a childcare provider, and the children mixing from day one with people using wheelchairs, and the fact that it's just completely normalised. So by the end of the first day or the first week or however long they're there, by that time they go to mainstream school, they don't see any difference, and they're absolutely just accepting of it. So these things I think are very important, because I think the more you come across this in your everyday life, the more normalized it is. And it's only when it's hidden or not in front of you, or you're not experiencing it, that it's an issue for you when you come across it. And I think we just, you know, definitely diversity is the thing, and we need more of it.
But we had Fiona, Jamie, Dorothy, Anne and Carmel in our group, and mainly Dorothy and Dorothy, sorry. Dorothy had asked about and Fiona had asked about the disability awareness training and just about accessing that. So then Anne was able to give them some information about how to get in touch with Martin and everyone around that. And then we talked a bit about how to kind of improve how services are communicating out there, that their classes and their services are accessible, and how to communicate that from the outset more effectively. And also, I'm just about to share a wee link in the chat. Jamie in our group from the Ability at Work team in Cork is actually a part of our Learners as Leaders program in earlier in the year, and they did a whole campaign around inclusion. So I'm gonna share a wee link about that in the chat, and you should all have a look. But Anne, do you have anything to add there?
No, just that, Fiona, we'll link you up with Martin after this, and you can chat to him. And it's Dublin Dunleary you're based, Fiona, is it? Yeah, perfect. Thanks.
Oh, okay. I'll be in touch with you.
Thanks, Martin.
Thanks.
Hi, yeah, thanks, Barry. Joanne kindly was half volunteered to do a little bit of feedback for us, just so it's not me always doing the talking. Joanne, would you like to give back just some of your reflections on what we covered?
Yeah, no bother at all. I didn't realise it, so I wasn't taking notes, but yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we just kind of gave a brief, I suppose, overall of the webinar itself and that, and which is and then we went in then, and we were just kind of talking about different things, inclusivity, and picking up on Sarah's points, and different things like that, disability awareness with Martin, and then we were talking about the ability program. I'm thinking now, thinking back off the top of my head. So I missed anything there, Sam, just let me know on that.
Yeah, that was spot on, Joanne. Thanks a million. I thought another kind of interesting point that we just noted really quick was how often when you make something more accessible for one particular group, actually it benefits everyone. And we thought that in terms of universal design, UDL in particular, and things like the very simple, fantastic example that Sarah gave about the black background and white text, and how that will, it's primarily, I suppose, aimed at people with visual impairments, but actually that would be of benefit to anyone and everyone. So I think that was a really good point, but we covered a lot and I won't be able to do justice to it either. Really valuable contributions. Thanks so much.